I found grid works of canals in Mauritania all around and different ages, I believe. And the 50-mile long one that points right at the mouth, that's a big one. And guess what? I didn't say the big surprise was there is an artifact. It's this 10-meter long item. But this artifact, there's this Russian group of, they've been doing tours there. In fact, they invited me to do one in November.
And good afternoon, everyone. Guess who's back? David Stig Hansen. He is taking his fourth trip to the Eye of Africa, the Richet Structure. Second time right now, he's in Cadiz in Spain. And that's a jump off point to get to the next leg to get down to Africa. He's going to tell us about it. Now, in the previous couple of videos on his trips, I kept trying to highlight it because for me, I'm super fascinated by this archaeology and this terraforming and so many things that are put in the floods, the flood patterns over, washing over Africa. So he's going to go to a couple different areas this time outside the actual eye, and then he can explain it to you, sort of where the ocean basin would have been. And there's some, it looked like sculpted mined rock. David, appreciate it. I heard those bells in the background there. It sounded like ringing bells. And, I've been to Europe a few times. And what's going on with the bells back there?
I sent you a picture of the cathedral outside. The cathedral is right up there, and there's two bells, and they go off like during the day 4 times an hour, and at night, at midnight, it's like the final bell.
You've earned it, dude. You've been punching at this thing forever and ever, and you never stop. So that's the thing about success. He's been grinding for years on this thing, and just the never-ending quest. He does not stop. He's like his energizer. Ancient archaeology, just go, will not stop until the next question is answered. And then after that, he finds 10 more questions and keeps going. And that's just like a success point for anybody.
Things are going crazy.
Yeah.
First of all, there was the 50-mile long canal that points right at the mouth of the Richat Structure. And I discovered that live on air on my channel. And by the way, please check out my website, David Stig Hansen. It's spelled my name, put the letters together, .com, of course. That's got a GoFundMe link, and I'd really appreciate it if someone bought me a cup of coffee. I just sent you pictures of the star fort I just visited here in Cadiz.
Yeah, beautiful. Right at sunset too. And I was thinking, bells going off, sunset on the waterfront. It's got all the hallmarks of you're at a stepping off point to the next part of your journey.
It's been an exciting day. First of all, oh man, when you get here, see that cathedral, and I just sent you some pictures. I don't know if you can see on your phone. Maybe you could put it in later. Shot we got with the sunset of the cathedral that's right here, but we were far away, and the whole coast. And out in front of the cathedral right now, we got a big crowd of people. You can hear them. You can hear them shouting and screaming. But I want to remind everybody that Cadiz was mentioned by Plato. And so it brings a real world connection to the story of Atlantis. And it's incredible because I found some new things, and there's a lot of new things like that 50-mile canal. Remember, there's something new about it. But now, because I'm talking about the Plato, I want to say I recently did a little chat GPT and found out that, first of all, people in the 1500s knew about Antarctica. I have a bunch of maps from before then, and they knew that they believed. Let's say it's their myth, but what their myth said proves about where Atlantis was. And I'll tell you how.
What if I told you that groundbreaking studies have uncovered a therapy so powerful it's helping people achieve what was once thought impossible? Imagine having the energy of someone half your age, the skin of somebody 20 years younger. That's what thousands are experiencing with red light therapy. Whether you're battling chronic fatigue, stubborn weight gain, joint pain, autoimmune flare-ups, just minutes a day with clinical grade red light, it works by recharging your cell's mitochondria. Like fueling billions of tiny batteries in your body. This is especially powerful for immune cells, which need massive energy to function at their best. That's why countless studies show red light therapy's incredible benefits. Not all devices are created equal. You need medical grade power and all 9 healing wavelengths, ensuring maximum power deliverability for deep cellular healing with no harmful EMF. Want to learn more? Go to myredlight.com, use the coupon code ADAPT2030 to get 10% off your purchase. One device serves the whole family and pays for itself in months. Don't settle for fatigue, pain, and premature aging. Reclaim your vitality with Red Life.
First of all, the Nile, everybody knows it splits off. You've got the West Nile and what's known kind of like East Nile. So, right, in the West Nile kind of hits Lake Chad or the ancient Mega Chad. But what they used to believe was that it was coming from Mauritania area.
Stig, if I might interject, perhaps it was 6,000 years ago when the mega
Perhaps
lakes
it
were
was.
full.
Perhaps it was. And there's a third thing on the map that I've just recently been showcased. Plato said that Atlantis was beyond the Pillars of Hercules. But what they fail to say is that the twin of Atlas received the lot of land across from Cadiz. Nobody mentions that. They always deflect and they forget to say that. People are hiding this story. It's a real story. Interesting. So that means that Morocco belonged to the twin of Atlas, if I didn't make that clear.
Could I interject? Yeah, I understand that. So imagine if it was connected and those two pillars were ripped apart by some sort of magnetic 0 point and the earth spun in a different direction, which many a legend talked about. And, could it be earth ripping? And then if the whole Atlantic Ocean flowed into that previous mining area basin that would have been empty, that could have been part of at least regional great flooding. I'm just curious. There's so many ways to take this, and
there's a lot to talk about on that.
Are they almost like twins, like literally twins? Like it would almost be the mountain was ripped and then split.
I want to be honest with you. They are kind of offset. I could be more specific, but let me just keep it simple. The cliff is what's consistent. The cliff that if you look at over on the Rock of Gibraltar and over on the edge of Morocco, it looks like it could meet. It looks like it can meet. Now, if you're talking about the two pillars, those are mountains. I visited both of them. So Mount Moses is a little offset. So anyways, but the Tamanrasset Paleo River, we might as well rename it to the Atlantis River because it was flowing from the Atlas Mountains. And and other mountains too. But the point is, maybe a long time ago, it really did come across the Sahara. And why? Because there was ancient water management going on. There was ancient megalithic terraforming going on. I've demonstrated it over and over again. And the Richet structure, while I don't know if the circles themselves, I don't think that they were really created by human men. But who did do all this stuff before that I found in North America even? But definitely there was some advanced technology going on, and I can show you again and again and again.
But I myself going back into the Ghana Kingdom and the Aksum Kingdom, and there were quite a few others along West Africa. There was an entire network of rivers that stretched from West Africa all the way over to the Red Sea. And if you look back so I want to do some math with you. The Great Lakes that we consider the giant Great Lakes in America, all of those together would be less than what you're talking about, the Great Lakes Sudan. If you were and I looked at all the size of the African mega lakes and the amount of square kilometers of all the mega lakes at their maximum height, that's insane how big it was. And the interconnected waterways on bodies so large, so vast, that was an interconnected network along trade routes by river and canal from East to West Africa for a couple of thousand years.
I found grid works of canals in Mauritania all around and different ages, I believe. And the 50-mile long one that points right at the mouth, that's a big one. And guess what I didn't say? The big surprise was there is an artifact in there. I did a video 24 minutes long. If you don't want to wait to see the artifact, go straight to the middle of the video. It's this 10-meter long item. But this artifact, there's this Russian group of, they've been doing tours there. In fact, they invited me to do one in November. So what you mentioned about the lines, the parallel lines, I've already shown you on your channel all the ones I found. You get parallel canals, and that's one thing, and it looks unnatural. But when you have cuts that are straight this way and straight that way, the Richet structure, this is why I'm going to what I call the Giant's Quarry. I've got images, and I think you actually took them out of that slideshow, but they're 6 miles long, and they're parallel going over about 3 miles. Now, I think that was the original cuts to start a big, big project. But Then later, as time went by, other people came in. I want to go there. There's this one kind of ellipse, and I call it the Giant's Quarry because it's a little mound of these ruiniforms. Then there's so many parallel lines in this one alone. So I want to go there and take pictures. Why? Because I've been looking at it for 3 years. Jimmy talked about the castle, and then I went there to the castle. And out of the YouTubers, I was the first one. Then these 3D scanners, they had gotten there just before me, and that material is still out there, but their website's down. Then I went back, the parallel canals as well. And the parallel canals are actually at the highest point above the Richat. And in that middle, you can see the same, but there are lines all over Africa. Kalahari canals, you know about that. We've talked about these for 10 years now. And there's some in Namibia. Similar to the Kalahari, there's some in Mali around that river. That river is the Niger River, I believe. And now I've found more and more and more. And there's parallel canals next to rivers. And South Africa, that's something really old. And we have plateaus that have been mined. And I found so many canals around the Richat in so many places. And as I said, the now called Atlantis River, or the ancient Tamanrasset Paleo River. And I'll shut up after this for a sec to let you talk. The Piri Reis map shows it. The coastline of that African West Africa is so perfect on the Piri Reis map. And where it belongs, you can see the Tamanrasset going up to into a mountain, and it stops. Then you've got what looks like maybe Mansa Musa or somebody else who looks Arab, not black, and a dog. Then the river starts again, and it goes to this circle. And then it has another little segment, and it goes to another circle. The craziest part is we found another Richet structure. I think I've shown you. There's 2 of them, and they actually are parallel to the ancient equator that connects Giza to Easter Island.
No, again, you'd be talking about actual geophysical movements of the poles versus magnetic.
Well, you were the one who talked about ley lines, and that is kind of ley line number 20, right by the Richet, right south of it a little bit. Ley line number 20. And it's not really the same as the Giza Easter Island thing, but that line wasn't really perfect. There were a lot of places that were kind of above or below as far as ancient places.
Stig, if I might interject here, that makes perfect sense that canals would be cut at different times. And that's why there's so many intersecting ones. Because now I have also been forecasting that an enormous amount of towns, villages, and settlements and small cities near the basin of these previous megalakes are going to be getting flooded out, and have been, because as the rains increase in West Africa and through the Sahel, they followed the water down as it was drying out. And as it was drying out, would they not just continue to carve down in to continue a water channel? Of course they would. So some areas would have dried out that were higher up in elevation, no longer to be used, and they might be considered roads, quote unquote, but they were perhaps dried out waterways. You could clear those out of muck and then maybe use it for fertilizer, and then you'd have at least some sort of like pathway to go through instead of over an area cut right through. Now, these African megalakes are at the lowest they have ever been in the last at least 6,000 years. So as they were drying out, everybody was following this because they needed the water. They followed it all the way to the bottom. And the lakes are just smidgens of themselves, or like postage stamps comparatively what they were before. But now they're starting to refill with all this extra water coming down across everywhere in Africa and the Middle East. You got places blooming in the middle of the desert. You got grasslands occurring and like sprouting in the middle of the desert. Some of the driest areas in the world are forming lakes between the sand dunes, and grasses are forming now.
Yeah.
So this whole thing, now when it refills back up, I would be of the very same thought that some of these canals will start to fill again. And as it starts to fill up, some of those water channels will start running, and you'll see like a blue streak or whatever of water going down, refilling the previous old channels. Now I would be highly waiting to see some of that.
There's water okay, so there was a good rain last year, a couple of years ago. There's lots of water in the Richat, lots of lakes out there. There's a lot of what used to be the 50-mile long canal has water in it in several places. The Richet structure has water in it. And I might note that water doesn't flow from the Richet structure. The water that's there now is you see I never thought a tsunami washed it over. So the water that the salt that you see there just evaporated. There was water there. And I do believe there was a lake on the top. You can see the salt. It gets covered up with sand, so you don't know where that lake was. But the ancient Tama and Richet River flowed right above it.
But
Sorry,
wait,
someone's
going
not.
north of the Richat structure is that ancient shoreline. If it would have been an ocean there, or an ocean shoreline, or some sort of mega lake shoreline, you can clearly see where there could have been a port, because we, in today's world, we always look for the largest indentations where you could dock ships. All right. So if we're
Right.
just going to repeat the past and look for areas that could have been a shoreline or a port area, some of those larger indentations going around there, they must have dropped some stuff overboard, you know.
That artifact that they found, the Russians, I haven't visited it, but we got the pictures. That is 10 feet long and it has been tested. It is iron enriched and has manganese in it. That's what you use to make steel, right? And a 50-mile long canal, which you can clearly see, probably needed some kind of technology like a lock. We have locks on the Panama Canal, and this canal segment that I show, that's the part that shows. The rest, I believe, there was ancient seas, but the that canal is one of many, and the others, like the North Shore you just mentioned, the 200-mile North Shore. There's not just what you said, ports. There was also canal inlets that got to the other side, and I can show that. And if you notice that other little circle, you know how there's another little circle near the Richat?
Mm-hmm.
That's called the Semsiat feature. Don't call it a dome. The Richat structure is not a dome, not a volcanic dome. I don't want to talk about how it was created, and I'm not even going to talk about how it disappeared. I don't want to talk about what I believe is a crater right in the center, bullseye. People get confused. They think I'm talking about the creation of the Richat. So I'm not even talking about that anymore. But what I can say is there's another little circle and there's little canal inlets. I think that could have been some type of water management structure. Long gone. People say, where's the stuff? Where's the stuff? I think the impact removed it. But
Oh man,
that north,
Stig, I'll stop you there. I mean, can you imagine in today's world, all of our buildings, everything would be crushed, gone, overgrown, beneath the sand, beneath the dirt in like less than 300 years. Even like New York City would mostly disappear in under 500 years.
well, look at the cities that are already dilapidated.
Yeah, that's what I'm
And
saying.
I
They would
do.
not last at all. At all. And that's a managed city where they still cut the weeds and they still cut the trees. Like I have a
Mhm.
farm out here in East Tennessee, and we let the back 4 acres go for almost 2 years. Not really. I mean, I bush hogged it a couple times, but the trees were already 12 feet tall. The saplings were 12 foot tall. And that was only after a couple years, like fast growing gum trees and pine trees and thing. You give it another 20, 30, 50 years, those things would be 50 feet tall, you know, and then those roots just
Right.
grind everything. And then dirt can build in on top of that. Your city would literally totally disappear in just a couple hundred years. That would be a forest, and you would not even know there was a city there. You might find some pieces of concrete here and there from maybe an overpass or something like otherwise, and that would be considered megalithic structures, megalithic blocks. You would find nothing else. Now
That's
give
what
it
the Amazon's doing.
3,000
Yeah.
years, 6,000 years. You're not finding a single thing unless it's made of very hard stone.
You can classify the findings of all these ancient civilizations pretty well. You get into the nitty gritty with all the charts and all the weather history. I just see stuff on Google Earth. I'm a Google Earther. I have been well before I was a traveler to the Richat, and I found the Richat online 15 years ago. But as Google Earth, I found stuff, or people have shared stuff everywhere, and stuff was going on. That's what I can demonstrate that. I can show you that. My slide collection. I think some of the most important slides that in my collection are those in the Grand Canyon. What I've seen, and you talked about overburden dumping, the top of the plateau seems to be left alone. But where the river makes an escarpment, that's where they go in. Or if they're big time, they just scrape the hell out of the top. I can show you that again and again. The perfect. I don't believe in jointing. I don't believe in that type of geological explanation, that mainstream explanation. Also, volcanic dikes, the walls, the ridges. Uh, I'm sorry, and I don't want to get too. You can even cut this out if you
Yeah,
want.
no, I could see where it would stretch for, I'll say a couple miles, but that same volcanic dike going for 45 miles perfectly straight, there's there's a little bending in terms of like what can be, perhaps the one area was volcanic dike, but the rest of it,
Mm,
because imagine riding on top of that. Okay, so the formation was there, and if you come in with some sort of like advanced technology, would you not build off of what was already there? Of course you would. Like the man-made structures part that were talked about in Atlantis around the rings were probably there already as a natural formation, and then they
right.
were just sculpted or something like we would do also. If there's already a pre-existing structure there, we usually add on, we put some bricks on the side, some stones, we add into it. And like if two walls are already done for you, why would you build them? You just kind of build two more walls yourself. It's the same thing, but I cannot believe, and I'll agree with you too. Now, a lot of people might go, oh, you don't know anything. You're not a qualified geologist. Or, okay, I'm
And
not.
that's where it's a logical fallacy to attack somebody's person. That's an ad hominem instead of attacking the question itself.
Right, but 45-mile run of straight like volcanic dike basalt rock going, I mean, in as straight as an arrow line. You got to ask a question regionally. Okay, where there was an extrusion there where the volcano was. I get it. That's definitely something there. Geologic form runs like a couple dozen miles. That just doesn't
Right.
make sense for me there.
Check out my Pie Town, New Mexico research. Check out what I found in Willow Creek up in Colorado, right at the Continental Divide. These ridges were actually sculpting the watershed. They were actually controlling water management, ancient water management. I believe it now. I can't unsee it.
Now, what that would lead with is another question then. Okay, so the history of mankind we've been given is Homo sapiens sapiens, about 400,000 years old, approximately. But then if you go back to, and I like to go further, if we go back over into Asia and we take a look at some of the Chinese myths, the Indian Vedas,
Mhm.
the Indian mythologies, they talk about us as humans in one form or another being here for 23 million years. So that's a lot of leeway in terms of technology development, cataclysm, collapses, back and forth,
Right.
up and down, up and down. I mean, okay, so there's a lot of validity to multiple cultures across multiple continents saying that our human history is like millions of years older than Lucy and
Sure.
all these things sitting out there in the
Right.
African.
So Randall Carlson says that people were quarrying outcrops 1.5 million years ago. Where did that come from? Who are these people? And then you've got, of course, the fact that there were different things happening at different times all over the world. Hunter-gatherers still exist today, right?
Eye of Africa, the Richet Structure, super famous, visible from space. Now, if you're going to the northeast, probably like 2 o'clock position of coming off of the Richet Structure. Now, you're heading about 100 miles up to the coastline where those carved areas are inside the rock. Is that your new
Yeah,
destination outside the Eye of Africa?
they're called ruiniforms because they look like ancient ruins, but they're not. They're natural. It's very funny how they play games like that. And so the ruiniforms, just like Utah in what's it called? Below Moab, what's that called? The Canyonlands. Those are also would be ruiniforms. Those are highly sus to me. And in my opinion, I just want to touch them. I want to photograph them up close. Hopefully, get a drone shot or get a high shot, but not so high. I mean, I can get Google Earth, but I want to know how high these are and what they look like up close. I think they're totally degraded. I'm not going to be able to see cut marks. They've been outside for millions of years. I think you said 23 million. I believe that's a viable number, but let's just be a little bit more down to earth and say 1 or 2 million. That's still gonna
Yeah.
you're exposed to the. I think that the Sahara Desert is kind of evidence of maybe a cataclysm, but maybe a project that totally annihilated it. They didn't care about the fact that it would turn it into a desert. They just wanted those minerals. You can see it everywhere you go in the Sahara. People don't know. People only talk about Egypt. Why? It's a deflection. I can show you stuff in each country, weird, crazy, big megalithic stuff, and
Stig,
it's
I would say also, that if there is a cycle that we're talking about of cataclysms or polar orientation, or just check your box of some cyclical largeness and sort of like cataclysm, that thing's been underwater, above water, sand
yeah,
blasted for 10,000 years, underwater again for 10,000, above water for 12,000.
sure.
Imagine if it's on like just a great year clock where it's below for 25,000, above for 25,000, below. But I think there's smaller cycles riding in there, so we'll say 12,000, half of a cycle. Like how many times would that have been above and below, above and below, and above and below, and scraped and washed and tidal waved and moved? Like would be an enormous amount of just natural degradation to the sites just off the cyclical flooding, reflooding, drying, and all these things that go along with water and wind erosion. So to find something, if you're going to look for kind of chisel marks or petroglyphs or something, I don't know if they would still be there after that long a period of time.
Of course, and I agree with you 100%, but I'm not talking about a small human-sized chisel. We're talking that 50-mile-long canal is actually like 100 feet wide and about 50 foot tall. So it's a lot of it has disappeared, and maybe there were some like in Taiwan, there's retaining walls that actually have disappeared. It seems to me that these things are etched deep enough that they're still noticeable, and I do think that somebody was making walls all over this world. So yeah, the cataclysms and the time, and I don't really believe in water erosion and wind erosion doing. Even now I'm questioning Joshua Tree. I used to think, oh, that's the skeleton of a mountain, but now I feel like that looks like it was ice cream scoops. When you see a ridge, but instead of being a normal mountain, you've got amphitheater after amphitheater, and they're at awkward angles. There's a chance, like in South Africa, those amphitheaters follow these ancient ridges for miles. And you mentioned, I was saying 13 miles long. There's one that's about almost 13 and a half. Shiprock, they have a wall in the middle, but then they have dirt compacted on both sides. And it's like, how does that naturally happen? It doesn't make sense. Because the rule is first you have the bedrock, then there's a crack, and then the magma fills the crack, and then the crack hardens, and then the bedrock erodes away. Wait a minute, come on. How does it just move out of the way and leave these sand? No. Pie Town, New Mexico. I discovered that through topographical maps. Those ridges are 12 miles long each, and they're perfectly parallel. Offset, but parallel. And I climbed up on one of them. They're like 200 foot high. It's like, wait a minute, where's the rest of the foundation that eroded away? It looks like a normal landscape. It doesn't make sense anymore. So, yeah, people pull the wool over our eyes on many levels.
So what do you expect to find up there? Like, I looked at some fan, it didn't look like alluvial fans, but it looked like some sort of fan formations that were mineral deposits up there right near where you're going. Are you gonna, get, like I said, get some drone shots? You're going to be able to drive down in there and take a look at the different mineral layers while you're there, or how does this? What are you going to?
Well, there's so many things. When you mentioned the alluvial fans, that's what's inside that impact crater, and I do want to try to find impact proxies in there. But there's so much area to cover, and I want to visit certain things. I wanted to go to the corner of the eye, Galawia. There's water there. There's a well for water sitting. I got new photos of that area, and a lot of people have been going. A lot of these real good trekkers, they've been going. I'm not the only person who's gone to the Richet Structure. There's lots of European 4x4s, campers. There's Itchy Boots. She drives a motorcycle. She got a great shot of the Richet Structure. So I got the satellite phone working, and I promised anybody who donates to my GoFundMe that I'd call them from the center of the Richet. Are you ready to take that call, David?
Yes.
It's a satellite phone. I'm going to text your phone. And that's just one thing. And I've got mosquito killer, because the mosquitoes are the largest I've ever seen over there in Mauritania. I looked up once into the sky and saw what I thought were birds flocking from the sea into inland. No, those were bats. They were everywhere. It's a huge, like millions of bats coming in from the Atlantic Ocean. I did something stupid. I left the window open in Nouakchott, the capital, and I woke up to all these big, huge, dark mosquitoes on the ceiling, and I couldn't have that. So the next trip I bought this, and this is one of those mosquito killers, but it's like the one in Taiwan where you plug in the wall, but this one is, it's got the internal battery. So I'm leaving this window open, but it's so beautiful outside here in Cadiz tonight.
But if you're interested in his journey, davidstighansen.com. Remember, you can support him right over there on GoFundMe. If you have a request or you want to support this type of venture with specific targeting on something out there in terms of information search, we got a person that feels very confident going back again and again.
2025 is an exciting year. And now we're here, and this trip's happening. And Ben with a carved rock vases, the stone carved vases. That's really exciting stuff. And it's just a exciting June 20th, Cosmic Summit. We'll see each other first there. We need more people coming out here. Check out the Richat structure on the ground. Check it out on Google Earth. I think that's more important. You know, people ignore what's so open around us.
And I appreciate everybody watching. Thank you for your valuable time. And as more discoveries come, David and I will bring them to you right here on the channel. Dave, anything last to sign out with?
That's it.